Welcome everybody to episode 1 of Tips and Tricks for Writing Manuscripts. I've been talking about this with a lot of my Ask the Author videos, and here's episode 1, because it seemed like a lot of my readers just wanted advice on how to write, how I do some of the things that I do as far as the writing process goes, and just sometimes where things come from, how I pull them off. So I'm going to do a video series covering a lot of those things. Of course, I'm not going to be able to cover everything, so if there's something I leave unmentioned or uncovered in any of the videos that I'm going to come out with for this, be sure to leave a question or a comment, and I will do my best to get back to you and answer those if I don't answer them in a video. So in episode 1, we're going to be covering the basics. Just simple tasks and things, good habits for you to form in order to lay a foundation for original work. And I'll get to that here shortly. And I got several points I want to cover. But for starters, I guess I could go into where I started. I started writing when I was about 12, 13 years old, in earnest, I guess you could say, because before that, for a couple of years, I just kind of dabbled in it. I'd write little things here and there, testing out poetry and things like that, school projects, which turned out pretty well, but I didn't have a passion for it yet, and that came about when I was about 13 years old, and it just kind of grew from there, just bigger and bigger and bigger, to the point where I started writing my first book when I was about 15. And finished it when I was roughly 16. So it just kind of took me by surprise, and I've been doing it ever since, obviously. For those of you who've been to Fiction Press and found Lucky Fire Rabbit, that would be me. The Dragon Knight Legacy and Phoenix Queen. Dragon Knight Legacy is not finished. It's still got about 2 books to go, and Phoenix Queen is not finished yet. I haven't touched it in a while. But sometimes your inspiration comes and goes. One thing you'll find, the more you work on, especially original work, it can be a little tough to keep the thoughts flowing sometimes. I have several manuscripts that lay unfinished because of that. But up until now, which was 13 some years ago, come last April, I started writing, and here I am. No, I don't have any published works publicly, aside from, stuff on the internet, but that's alright. Never have expectations to make it big. But, so I guess we could get on to the tips and tricks real quick. Good writing habits. That's probably number one all-encompassing term, I suppose you could say, for how to get started. Like I said, we're just going to be covering the basics. We'll get into more detailed stuff in episode 2, such as finding a genre and coming up with a cast of characters and things like that. But in this one, we're just the simple stuff to get you started. Finding time. Finding time to do what you got to do to get started. Find time to research. You're going to want to take hours a day, if you have them to spare, to do research on your chosen theme, your chosen genre, on the ideas that you just have fluttering about between your ears. You're going to want to take a lot of time to find the articles, to study the other authors that have done similar themes and genres. You're going to want to take the time to double check all the research that you find and compile it together into stuff you can use. Sometimes that can be difficult, because one of the biggest things that I've struggled with is it's been done before. Yes, every story's been told more than once. That's one thing you need to accept right away when you start working on your original content, is it's been done before. But that's not something that you should focus on. What you should focus on is how you're telling the story. That's something I've told my husband, who struggled with writing for a while. It's not the story you're telling, it's how you tell it. So with that in mind, it becomes a little easier. The job's a little simpler when you kind of let go of that doubt and just grab on to, that stuff you got that makes you special and gets the words out, I suppose. It lowers a wall and lets you get things done. So I just kind of lost my train of thought there. Yeah. So find time to research. Find time to take your notes that you need. And you can never take too many notes or do too much research. It's never enough. Even if you feel like it's too much, you're probably wrong, so just keep going. Another good helpful tip is to make your space to do your work. Like my space here. I have my back to the wall. Nobody can read over my shoulder, which is one of my big peeves. I don't like it when people read over my shoulder, and I'm sure a lot of writers out there don't either. So I keep my back to the wall, and that allows me to really focus on what I'm doing instead of what everybody else around me is doing. And it's good to kind of keep these things in a private space too, such as the bedroom or the office if you have an office, or even just a corner that you've just kind of claimed as your own. It's good to keep these things, just away from people, because it can really be a distraction. Even if you don't mind being around people when you work can make things exceedingly difficult. Even if you're not easily distracted, something is going to hold you back, even if it's just the simple anxiety of people seeing something of yours that isn't finished or something that you hold near and dear to you, because you're going to get attached to your work. That's just that's kind of a law of the universe that they never tell you about, is you're going to get attached to your work, whether it's good or not, or whether you feel it's good or not. It's your baby. It's your brainchild. So sometimes whether you're comfortable with people around you when you work or not, it's good to just keep that sort of thing private. It keeps the clouds out of your head, so to speak. So, and it's good to keep your bookshelf nearby. Right behind me, I have my bookshelf littered with action figures and odds and ends like that. But that's what inspires me. You want to be surrounded by things that inspire you, that draw the ideas out, and that just help keep you immersed in what you're doing. So I have my bookshelf right behind me, all my sketch pads, because I like to sketch when I write sometimes to kind of give myself a clearer picture. And it makes things convenient, because sometimes when you're right in the middle of something just huge as far as writing goes, you get suddenly derailed and you need to find yourself again. So you grab a book, you read through it, especially if it pertains to the material you're working on. It can be really helpful in getting you back on track. Also, one thing that I found that helps me is music. And I'm sure a lot of you will agree that music is incredibly inspiring, and it really finds those deep buried emotional sparks, I guess you could say, that help you get real in depth with what you're writing and really bring it out, and it can make it something really incredible if you have just the right tunes. So music is incredibly important to the writing process. At least it is for me. It may not be for everybody, but everybody's different. So most of you could probably relate to this tip. And I kind of lost my train of thought again. But yeah, music. And you're going to want varied types of music. Even if it's not really a genre you too much care for, having a few tracks of pop music, country western, whatever it is you're into, and stuff you only kind of like, it's okay to have those. You're going to want varied musical taste, because you're going to be writing a varied array of subject matters and characters, and it kind of helps to add that dimension of realism when you're drawing on that raw emotional power that the music brings out. So music is incredibly important. Let's see. And while it kind of pertains to research, make time to brainstorm. One of my favorite brainstorming techniques is to turn all the lights off, close my eyes, lay in bed, and just listen to music on shuffle, so you don't know what you're getting, but your brain is constantly turning. I tend to get most of my ideas from this technique, because it just lets my mind work, because I kind of deprive my other senses. There's no light, there's no sight, all I have is sound, and my brain translating that sound into something else. So if you just focus basically on what you're working on and just let the music play, you're bound to get something substantial out of it. Even if it's just for like a half hour to an hour a day, during, before, and even after the writing process. After the writing process, it's good for just kind of clearing out the pipes and refreshing yourself. But during and before the writing process is a huge help for me in particular, because I tend to form a lot of storylines and action scenes and all these other things while I'm using this technique. So sometimes just find a quiet place, turn out the lights, and flip on the tunes and see what you come up with. I think you'll be surprised with what you get. Let's see. Another technique that I find really useful, especially if you're a perfectionist and you don't always catch your mistakes right off, is every few chapters you finish, put it down. Don't touch it for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever's comfortable for you. Whenever you feel like you've distanced yourself from it, where it's not your best friend anymore, it's just a coworker type of relationship, and that coworker is asking you, hey, what am I doing wrong? It's a really good chance to distance yourself and not make it so personal, so you're more critical of what you've written, and that way it's easier to find mistakes, inconsistencies with theme and plot and character elements and so on and so forth, and it makes you a better editor for yourself, and it's a really good technique to use, and it also kind of gives your brain a break after, because I believe it was one night I was up till 6 a.m. and I wrote about 50 pages after writing all day long. And all I wanted to do for the next 2 weeks is nothing. So it was a really good opportunity to check your work and to kind of just let your mind calm down and take a breath and distance yourself from it so you can better find your mistakes, especially repeat mistakes like I make. I tend to miss letters and double letters and things like that. So sometimes just put it down. Even if you still have good ideas churning and everything, just put it down, take a break, and then come back and check it. Especially if you don't have a beta reader or someone who can check it for you. It's a really good technique to use. So let me see what else. I got a little notebook here to help me keep track of what I'm talking about. So if I look away, let me see, what is this? Well, and now that I look it over, I kind of have every episode planned out. It looks like I've covered everything. So let's just do a quick recap. Make your time for research and writing. Make your space so that you're not bothered, you're not anxious, you're not distracted, and surround yourself with elements of what you're working on or what inspires you. Have your reference materials nearby also, so just in case you lose yourself, you can find yourself again. Brainstorm with yourself. Research, they're about the same thing, but brainstorming and research are a little different. Research, you're looking for materials. Brainstorming, you're putting them together into something you can use. So always find time to brainstorm. Even if you think you got it all figured out, taking a few minutes to think it over, look at it from a different perspective especially, can be extremely helpful with what you're doing. Making time to write. Make it a habit. Try and find the same time every day to work on your manuscript. It helps develop a routine, which kind of helps prep your brain to say, okay, it's almost this time. What are we going to do today? So it's good to make a habit of doing it the same time for the same amount of time, or how long you want, however much time you've got. Try and find that same amount of time at the same time during the day to do it, because that way, emotionally, you're going to be ready to go by the time you get there. Also, one big tip, don't worry about the story you're telling. Just worry about how you're telling it. It's all been done before, and nobody's going to come up with anything that big and new anytime soon. So don't worry yourself over being the next big thing. Just worry about what makes your version of the story unique. What makes it special. What's going to make people want to read you over the other guy. Simple tips, simple tricks, and hopefully these will lay some groundwork for some really great work out of you. So I guess we could cut it there. I hope you found some useful tips. If I didn't cover something you were really curious about, please comment. Please ask the questions. I will do my best to get back to you. And hopefully we can, I'll see you again in episode 2 of Tips and Tricks. Tips and Tricks. Can't talk. for manuscripts. Catch you then.